Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. My name's Hannah. I'm going to be leading today's Wednesday workshop. I have Kelly on the call with me as well. Let's go ahead and get into it. It looks like we already have a couple questions in the Q&A. As you guys need to, definitely feel free to drop in more questions into the Q&A, and we will get through all of them as soon as we can. Awesome. Okay, so the first question that we have is, can you go over the reporting tab in detail? We would be using it for from one team looking at multiple agents, transactions, etc. Lead source, volume per month, etc. Okay, cool. So first things first, the reporting tool. Let's talk a little bit about like the pricing and what plan you guys might be on and what you have available to you. When we talk about this reporting tool, if you are on the Grow plan, you are going to have access to one report, and that can have 4 widgets on it. If you are on the Pro plan, you can have 3 reports with 4 widgets per report. And then if you're on the Scale plan, you can have an unlimited number. So let's go ahead and build out exactly what you're asking, Addie. So I'm just going to go click on to the reporting feature right here. We'll click on the report right here, and then we're going to go to create new, and I'm just going to name it October report. Pop in today's date, 10/11. Oh, and say go. All right, so now we have this. So if you're on the Grow plan, you can create this one report. You can add on 4 specific widgets. So here we can see that we've got a list of all of our fields. If we wanted to track what you have, we're going to want to look for lead source. I'm kind of slower on this when it comes to it. Looks like I don't have lead source as an option in my fields. So that would be one thing is we would want to make sure that we have lead source as a field that we're tracking on the property. It wouldn't necessarily be pulling reporting details from the when you're on the contacts tab, if you need to do your lead sources through there, it wouldn't be pulling reporting from there. It's pulling details from the property. So lead source is something that we would probably either have as a field that gets selected or filled out on that property, whatever that looks like. So in this case, I can't pull in lead source, but volume per month, we can definitely go up and we can look for closed. I think that's probably going to give us our best bet. So file status closed. That way we can see what has closed for that month. That will show you the volume. We can also see any of the other file statuses here as well, or we can do it by the close date. So it just kind of depends. I'll go ahead and click on closed as the file status or the contract status. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the closing date as well. That way we have kind of both. We can see what both of those look like. I'll go ahead and say close on here. We're going to click on build report, and it's going to build these 2 reports. So if we wanted to sort it by specific agents, we can click on where it says agents here on the left-hand side. We can click on manage, and we can select our 2 agents and have them brought in. Here's our 2 agents. We can say build report. From here, what I would probably suggest is let's update the color coding for them, right? Let's go ahead and make Justin red, and then we'll leave the test OTC as purple. That way we can kind of see the difference between the 2 here. Now, when we're setting up this actual widget, we've said bring on these values, but we haven't said anything else. Here where it says the year, we can click on year and we can choose a specific time frame. So if you're looking at per month, you could say this month, you could say next month, you could say last month. I like having these selected versus, selecting the 1st through the 30th. And the reason I say that is because if we have this month selected, for example, I've selected this month here. What that's going to do is that when it gets to the next month, it's going to automatically update this from October to November. Okay, so having the selection here is going to allow you for that automation where it updates that particular widget instead of you having to update it every single time you need to get into the years. For anyone who's on the scale plan, that's obviously a really nice thing to have, because then you can create custom reports with these widgets that automatically update. If you want to look up not October report, but last month's report, as long as you've made sure to select this, last month, then you'd be selecting and seeing the last month or anything that's closed in the last month. I'm going to update this back to this month because I think we had values. Let me see. If we don't have any values, I'll go ahead and just say year to date. All right, let's go ahead and change that to 2023. So we add some values here. Now with this particular one, we can obviously have it as a line. We can change this to a bar graph if we'd like to too. This is just going to show us the volume for these. We can also click on list, and that's going to show us the list of the properties and each month that they occurred in. So here we've got Justin, that's our first agent. In September, they had one property. In October, they had one property. In November, they have one property. And in December, they have two properties. If I scroll down, once again, test OTC, September, October, November, and December. Okay. So it's just showing you the properties that are listed underneath them. I like this because it's kind of a cool thing to be able to really quickly click on and go, oh yeah, that's right. Let me make sure I updated the closing information on here. Maybe I needed to update that lead source on here, or I needed to say when this particular property was closing. I was able to click on that property right away and it pulls it open. And when I close out of it, it takes me back to my reporting widget. Looks like we've got a follow-up. The list on my account is pulling all properties under each agent's name. Do you know why that might be? The list on your account is pulling all properties under each agent's name. Well, technically, again, depending on how you have your settings set up here for like the date range, it's going to pull in the properties that are associated with that particular agent. So for example, I have Justin and I have OTC agent on these properties here, either through, as a, they're separate kind of properties, right? This one's closed in September. This one's closed in October. I believe that these are test properties that are in here. Right now that I'm seeing in my account. But why don't you send in a screenshot of what you're seeing to support so that way we can take a peek at it. Because, depending on how you have it set up for the year and you're saying what date range you're going to see, it'll depend on what shows up in this list. Right now, I'm seeing all of the, everything that's happened in 2023 on this list. Cool. The other thing you could do with these is that you can pull in different values. So if we wanted to pull in like purchase price, we could pull in purchase price too. Let me just find that field. I think it's actually at the top. Usually if I can't find it, I like to use that tool, the Control F or Command F on my keyboard to really quickly click on it, search for it, and find it. So once I've done that, now we're going to see some more values here of like how much have we done in this year alone for these two agents. When I go to the list here, we can see that Justin only had one property here for that price, and OTC test agent had 3 properties in October that they had. So this is probably a better example, kind of showing how it looks when we have like, this is the agent, this is the only property that they've had. If I update this and I say, change this from the year, and I say, I want to look at this month specifically, and I go to the list, here we can see that we just see test OTC agent, and here it's got those values here. So it's kind of just showing you like, you're going to want to make sure you update that date range. That way you can see the values that you need to see. For the year reference created. So it just kind of depends. Again, it's going to be based off of like, do we want to reference the year that it was created or the date that transaction was created? Or do we want to reference the date that it closed or the contract acceptance date or the last day of the year? Because sometimes you might be pulling reports from previous times within your database, or you might be pulling it in through saying like, let me see the closing date for this. And here, if I click on closing date, you can notice that some of the values have changed here for purchase amount. Instead of referencing when the property was created in 2023, it's now going based off of, okay, whatever, year reference the year that that these properties closed. And so now we see a lot more properties underneath this list. But if we go based off of created, then it's going to go based off of when that particular property was created. So it just depends on what your use case is for it. Cool. Let me know if there's any other questions on the reporting tool. It's definitely something to like poke around and play around with. Obviously, if I had more properties in my account, it'd probably be a lot more fun to look at this. I don't have too many though. So yeah. Awesome. Alrighty. So our next question, we have when viewing the properties tab, going to the properties tab, can we add more view filters to sort into segments like buyer's agent or listing agent? So kind of, but not necessarily. I'm going to go ahead and go to buyers under contract. Now, the way that I usually suggest people kind of set this up, because really these are the filters that we have as an option here, right? Obviously you can go based off of the assigned team. You can go based off of the assigned user if you need to here. But usually what I say is if you guys want to pull, I want to see the agents from this view. What I usually suggest is say, go to your table columns, go over to your contacts, and then go and find that buyer's agent. Once I've selected that buyer's agent, I can bring them up to the very, very top and say update. Again, this is on my buyers under contract segment. So once I'm underneath that segment here, we can see that these are my agents here that are selected as the buyer's agent for these properties. I can click on buyer's agent name and it's going to sort them. Again, if I had more properties in my account, it'd probably look a little bit better, but this is one way that you could go through and pull it. What I would also suggest is that you can export this CSV. So if you needed to export the CSV, pop it into Google, start, running some very specific reporting to say like, okay, these are all the properties that were completed by this person or this person. You could have it that way. Now, depending on how your guys' account is set up will depend on how your teams are set up too, because you could have it that, there's this one TC that works with this one agent every single time. And so that if you filter it by the team, then you're only going to see that agent's properties. It's definitely a good suggestion. I think that there's just some additional work for us to try to figure out, well, how would we relate it back to that buyer, that agent, right? Because here, this is going based off of the contact role that's associated with that person on that property. If we were to add in another filter, that other filter would have to be, like if you guys had people in your agent portal or you invited people to your agent portal, then you could create a specific filter off of it. I'll definitely take a note of it. Let me take a note of it really quickly. Because I think that that's kind of a smart idea for, if there's any feature updates, having a filter view here for anyone who's invited to the agent portal under the tables and segments. Another place that you can kind of look if you're like, I need to just know a quick list of the properties that are associated with these party members is here we can see, Jill is assigned the buyer's agent on this property. I can head over to my contacts. I can search up Jill. Here's Jill. I can see that she's associated with 5 different properties. I'll click on this Jill. And here I can see the list of those properties really quickly. So if you just needed to say like, okay, really quickly, I just need to see the properties that I have this contact on. This might be another really quick way of just kind of, let's double check. Let me see who's on this particular property. Let me go to their contact role. So here, and then double check, what properties they have. Just as another way to look at it while we're kind of, again, looking over improvements in the system. Cool. Yeah. And of course, yeah. Trying to think through some other ways. I'm trying to think of other ways that you could kind of pull the information. Obviously, like I said, that reporting tool is going to be the easiest. You can definitely edit and alter this anytime you need it to. So if you are on that pro plan and you're like, okay, or that grow plan, I should say, and you have a very limited number of resources when it comes to these, like you can always refresh and recreate the widgets every single time, pull on that list, and then go from there. It just depends on what your use case is, right? Cool. Alrighty, it looks like we're 0 on the questions. If anyone else has any questions, definitely feel free to drop them in. I know we had some really good questions recently in QA that kind of came up that were interesting, and I figured I'd kind of touch on them a little bit. So if you guys are ever in an instance where it's where you're trying to get into your account and you can't get into your account. You keep trying to log in and you can't log in. When you are trying to log in, we do have a forgot password option here. You'll just want to enter in that email or that username and say send password reset. You'll receive an email with that password reset. Then you can click on the link because they'll give you a link for it. Once you get that link, it'll prompt you to reset your password, and then you'll be able to log back into your account. It's been kind of common recently just because we've had a lot of onboarding of users. So I figured I'd mention it just in case you guys are like, how do I, is there a forgot password? Where do I get that? The other thing that, or the next kind of topic that people have been kind of running into is that, we've had a lot of people sign up and they're using that FUB integration and they're saying, hey, my FUB integration is not working as intended. Let's go ahead and head into Ivy Lane. If you're on the FUB integration or you're logged into Follow Up Boss and you're having issues, I'm going to go ahead and log into our Follow Up Boss account. Cool. If you're logging into that Follow Up Boss account and that Follow Up Boss widget is just not working, okay? This is the Follow Up Boss widget. Here we can see the timeline, the details, the documents. We can see the contacts. We can see tasks, notes, whatever we need to, right? Go to the details. I can click on property details. That'll expand that view. So if I'm having issues with this widget populating, within open and close, we're going to go to the property. We're going to go to more. We're going to click on Follow Up Boss. Once we're on Follow Up Boss, we're going to go to community, or I'm sorry, underneath the widget options, we're going to click on our, community or whoever it is. We're going to click on that particular user. It could be an agent. It could be your internal user, whoever it is. So here I've clicked on myself. We can search for that Follow Up Boss contact. Looks like I've got one right here. And then here on this opposite side where it says FUB agent, I'm going to go ahead and pull in someone else. See if I've got Justin in here. Cool. We'll go ahead and grab Justin. When I add Justin to this list, he has this word that says set role, right? So if he doesn't have a role that's associated with him just yet, it's going to say set role. When we click on set role, we've got a Follow Up Boss and a limited Follow Up Boss agent. I'm going to click on manage roles and pull open these two. The Follow Up Boss roles are completely different from how we would use agent portal roles or client portal roles within the system. Okay. So the Follow-Up Boss roles are specifically saying, what do we want to give access to that Follow-Up Boss user within open to close? Well, what details do we want to give them access to? So I name them FUB agent. I don't name it buyer. I don't name it seller. I name it FUB agent. And the reason I do that is because when we look at the permissions, this will let me know that the FUB agent gets access to all of these details within Follow-Up Boss. Here we can see those details here. The other one that I have is a limited FUB agent. Maybe I don't want to give them access to the contacts, or I don't want to give them access to the tasks that are scheduled or unscheduled. I just want them to see the completed tasks. They have the ability to upload and download documents from that screen, and they need the details and the timeline. The limited Follow-Up Boss is just another role that you can use to kind of say, well, for certain agents that I have the integration set up with, I don't want them to have all access to every single detail on this particular property. So when you're creating these Follow-Up Boss roles, and you see this up at the top, I suggest not having buyer's agent, or seller or lender. You're going to have Follow-Up Boss. That's what it is. It's what information do we want to share? Follow-Up Boss agent, where you're following up, you're sharing all the information, or a limited version of it. From here, we're going to want to set role, and we're going to want to select that role. And then now that widget is going to populate appropriately. So I'm going to head over to my people. We'll go down to Justin. We're going to go to that Follow-Up Boss widget. It's this one right here. Here we've got that Ivy Lane. And when we open it, we've got our timeline, our documents, our details, and only the completed tasks. So you can see how it limits the view on this so that instead our agents don't have to worry, or maybe we don't want to give them access to reach out to the contacts, or maybe we don't want to give them access to see what tasks are coming up. Instead, they really just need to see high level what's going on with this transaction, or they need to be able to download documents or upload documents. So here they could download any of the documents that they need to just by clicking on it, and boom, it prompts that download. Cool. Alrighty. Let's see. The next question that we have is triggering OneSheets. How do we get that to happen? It depends. You may have a OneSheet triggered off your intake form. I'm going to go ahead and head down to my hammer icon, into my templates, into my intake form. We'll go ahead and go into my buyer's residential. I'm going to click on form triggers because I want something to happen to the property after it's been submitted. Here I've got this trigger up here at the top. It's asking about looks like it's asking about inspections. I'm just going to go ahead and reuse this trigger here because I can reuse a trigger that's already been built out. I'm just going to click on templates. I can remove that trigger template there and I can type in OneSheet. Here's my OneSheet and I can add that on there. I can add on a condition if I'd like to. So I could say if the contract client type is equal to buyer, then I want this OneSheet to fire off. One caveat with having your OneSheet set up is that I usually suggest have them set up as form approved internally. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this and say add. And the reason I suggest having it as form approved internally for your OneSheets is because those OneSheets usually have a schedule already set up with them, right? Which means that they can go out automatically. If you apply it at the beginning of the transaction, let's say we change this to when it was submitted by the agent, we want this to apply. And let's say you didn't approve this intake form until 2 days later, you get a property, you're like, hey, we were still waiting on documents. I'm not going to necessarily go forward with this. If that OneSheet is applied by when it's submitted by the agent and it has a schedule associated with it, go out every Tuesday at 8 a.m. They submitted it on Monday, you bet your bottom, Tuesday at 8 a.m., this OneSheet's going to go out. So I always suggest have it upon form approved internally. That way you have the opportunity to double check. Yeah, no, we're ready to actually start running things live on this property. We're not on that review stage where I still need to, I'm waiting on specific documents from the agent, or I'm waiting on information about this particular property, or I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to service this agent. Right? Sometimes that's the case too. Like, hey, we're on hold right now. We're not taking any more transactions. You might need to pause your process. So for OneSheets, I always say form is approved internally. Okay. That way you guys have that opportunity. The other way that we can get OneSheets onto a property, and I'm going to go ahead and sort this like I always do because we want those to be in order. The other way that we can get OneSheets onto the property is by bringing them in through a task template. So I'm going to go to my task templates. I've clicked on my main buyers under contract. I'm going to go down until I see my, I know I have one on here that's called it. Oh, it might actually not be on here. We've got opening emails, confirm, review transactions, and send all amendments to escrow. Let's say it's this one, right? If you are on the grow plan, you should be able to do 3 triggers, task triggers per task. If you're on the pro plan, you have unlimited. If you're on the scale plan, you have unlimited as well. So if you're on the grow plan, you should be able to add in another task trigger. And you can say here, we've got our first 2, but here we can say we want when this task is marked off, is marked as complete, we want this OneSheet to apply. Okay. So that just applies the OneSheet. Now, usually for, for the sake of, keeping things neat, I always grab the name of it and I populate it in here. Looks like they, someone had already added on the same exact trigger that I just created, which is really funny because that's totally where I would have put it. But here now we have that trigger on the task that says send out this OneSheet as well. Okay. So you can either have it come on through the triggers on your intake form, right? Where you have your form triggers. You can have that OneSheet come on, or when you're looking at your task templates, you can have that task template bring on that OneSheet as well. Just depends on what you guys need. Now, when this one fires off, it's obviously going to be when you mark off that task as completed, then it's going to apply it to the property. As always, whenever we're dealing with OneSheets, I definitely suggest take a peek at it, review that the information looks good, and then always, always, always double check the schedule that's associated with it. So we're going to go to options and we're going to go to schedule and send. And we want to make sure that it's sending to the correct people, either to CC or BCC. Usually the default is BCC. And then here we want to make sure that the time frame that we say it every Monday at 8 a.m. makes sense, right? And usually here keep in mind, it takes it schedules within that 15 minutes. So once it hits 8 a.m., it either sends right at 8 a.m. If there are a lot of other people who are also sending the same thing at 8 a.m. on Monday, it might take a little bit of time. So it might be in the queue and go out at 8:05, 8:10, 8:15. It just depends. It goes out within 15 minutes of the selected time frame. Cool. Cool. I'm not going to add on anything to this though, because I don't want that one sheet to go out. It's just a test. Awesome. For email aliases, looks like that one's coming up again. Again, when we're talking about email aliases, we're talking about connecting that integration here. So either through Microsoft or through Google. When we click on addresses here, we can see a couple different aliases that I have. My best suggestion for email aliases is to type in, if you're a Google user, look up Google aliases and go to Google's article telling you how to create an email alias within your system. And the reason I suggest doing this is because this is going to be a lot more updated. It's going to be a lot more clear. They're going to have a video that's associated with it, explaining how to do it, all the things you need to consider when creating an alias. Now, once you create or add that alias in open to close, if you come back in open to close and you don't see it there, just click on resync email addresses. It's going to bring in any of those aliases that you just created. There may be some additional steps to creating an alias within your system. Right now, take notice that in my system, I have Hannah Hoxie at open to close, Hannah Hoxie at workflow boss, and then Hannah at open to close. The Hannah at open to close, super easy to make, right? My name's Hannah. It knows my name is Hannah. I put that in there. If I were to use someone else's name, let's say I said team at open to close, help at open to close, hello at open to close, any other kind of iteration, even someone else's name. If I said Kelly at open to close, typically that's going to ask you to validate and prove that you actually own that particular email address. So if you notice when you're entering it in, you enter in a different alias that doesn't have your name in it, and it's telling you, hey, you have to prove that you own this mailbox. It typically will send you an email, you validate it, you say, yes, we're good to go. That's an email that's okay to be used on there. And then you can run from there. So just keep that in mind. That's usually what we suggest. For Microsoft users, again, I would say Microsoft aliases, and I would grab Microsoft support for the aliases, right? So it's either going to be you're going through Google's or you're going through Microsoft's, but make sure that you're using their support channels for it. I want to say that we might have an article for it, but we might not. I'm just going to drop those articles really quickly in the chat for everyone, just in case you guys are curious, you want to read a little bit more about creating email aliases. Cool. So again, if there are any questions, absolutely feel free to drop them in the Q&A. These calls are built so that we can go through any questions that you guys might have, or feel free to share any wins, any recent wins that you guys had, or anything that went really well. The last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was removing a user. That was another thing that's been like pretty popular right now, of just like, we're removing users, we're adding on users, we're updating users. Before you remove any users from your system, you're going to want to make sure that those users are removed from the teams first. So for example, I'm going to I'll go ahead and I can actually invite someone to kind of show you what this looks like. Kelly, we're doing you. We'll say user type is a team member. I'm not really worried about the username, but I'll go ahead and grab this. I don't need to add in a name, but here, once I invite that user, it's going to show up here underneath our team members. If it does not show up, right, we've sent out this invite. If it does not show up, what you're going to want to do is exit out of that and then head back into the organization users. Here's that Kelly now. So when we're talking about removing a user, the first thing that we're going to want to do is, obviously, if that user has already been added to teams, let's go ahead and add Kelly to a couple different teams. Here we go. So we've got Kelly on a couple different teams. If we try to just delete her user here, delete, we're not going to be able to do it. There was an issue. We were not able to delete this person. The reason there was an issue is because we first need to delete Kelly from, oh, actually, it might have been because Kelly didn't have any transactions associated with her and she hasn't activated her profile, but it looks like we actually were able to delete you. Hold on, let's refresh and see. Ah, okay, cool. So if they haven't been added to any transactions, looks like we can delete them right from that screen. However, for the ones who are still on teams, for example, this one says to be deleted. Let's go ahead and try to delete it. If we continue to get this spinning arrow right here, and it's just continuing to try to remove, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remove them from the teams that they're on right now. So we'll click on this little trash can icon. We would want to assign those transactions from that particular user to a different user on that same team. So here I'm saying any intake forms, reassign it to the person who's on implementation. For any properties, reassign it to the person on implementation. And then you can say delete. Now, in this case, I think that my system might be having a little bit of an issue with actually deleting this particular team member. I think I need some development help. So if you run into this too, where you're like, I can't remove this user, what I suggest is number one, click on that user's permissions and remove all of their permissions. That way they do not have access to any part of your system, right? If you can't get a user out, they won't delete. You've removed them from the teams, or you tried to remove them from the teams and it wouldn't let you, and you're trying to remove them from here and it can't, and it won't let you. What I suggest is remove all of those permissions and then reach out to us in support. So that way we can get a developer to take a peek at your system, see what's going on, and fix whatever it is that's going on in there. Cool. Alrighty, it looks like Kelly also shared the open to close specific article. Thank you for doing that, Kelly. Let me grab that one and see what it says. Okay, cool. Cool. So this one goes through and it kind of shows you, you know, the steps that you would take with some of the pictures. Again, some of the pictures, like this one, the way that this is asking you to set up it, this particular adding on a alias, this is the notification that I mentioned where if you use different verbiage, for example, if I put Kelly at open to close as an alias within my system, I would have to go through these steps here where I'd have to say, yes, it's fine. You know, I do have access to it. But when we're talking, and same thing with like the other, like send emails from a different alias that has like a different a URL if you need to as well, non-Gmail aliases, you'll still need to go through and verify and authenticate that that email address is actually a valid email address that belongs to you. If you're just making, you know, the update like I mentioned where it's the same exact email, right? If I go back underneath email addresses, it's still Hannah Hoxie. It's just maybe it was hoxie at opentoclose.com or just hoxie at opentoclose.com. I'm not going to have to go through all those same steps of verification because those are technically different ways that you can spell my name. Okay. Cool. Just depends. So this one's a really great article for like, if you were trying to add in team use, like a team at, or a different kind of name that doesn't match what your original name is for your email. Cool. We still don't have any questions. No worries. We have like 2 updates from our change log. That's really cool. So if you guys ever need to see the change log, you're going to go over to your little person icon up here at the top. We're going to head down to where it says change log. Once we click on the change log, that change log is going to populate up. So what do we have? This first one up here, email template and smart block validation tool. A lot of people have been getting into their smart blocks and creating really cool smart blocks. And some of you have been getting a little too deep on your smart blocks. You've created a smart block that has a smart block group that has a smart block inside of it that has another smart block group. And the moment we get past like that layer 3, things start to get a little complicated with our smart blocks, right? Especially when we're not using things like conditional logic. So this validation tool, what that works as is we're going to head over to our email templates. Here's our email templates. We're going to go ahead and click on validate, and that's going to show us whether or not our merge fields are good, our smart blocks are good, and whether or not our smart blocks contain infinite loops. Infinite loops happen when the system is trying to produce the information that you've asked it to, but it can't actually validate whether that information needs to come on or not. So basically it's like a smart block within a smart block group, within a smart block, within a smart block group, and so on and so forth. It starts to loop itself. It goes, well, if you said we need this, then okay, we can do this. The next one doesn't have a condition. Okay, yeah, we can do this. And then the next one doesn't have a condition as well. We'll start from the beginning. Basically, it keeps looping on the tree. I don't have a great example of what that looks like with any of my emails, because thankfully I don't have to worry about that. But they do happen. So having this validation tool here is really helpful. If you do have any errors, okay, if you're like looking at your system and you're like, Hannah, when I clicked on validate, it didn't say all was good. And I see like this list of code. It will show you the tree to show you how that smart block is trying to process. Basically shows you where it started at the top. It'll show you that, if we're looking at a smart block here, let me go ahead and grab on to the intro email, and we'll click on our source code view. It looks a little something like this, right? It's got brackets in it. It's got like values in it, merge fields. It's got smart blocks on it. So it looks a little something like this. If you guys see that and you're having issues interpreting it or figuring out where the issue is, definitely feel free to take a screenshot, send it into support. That way we can take a look and kind of help troubleshoot it with you. I think as we continue to move forward with kind of, smart blocks and if this becomes like kind of a bigger thing, we'll definitely have articles on it. That way you guys can kind of rely on it. Oh, I saw this. What does it mean? Where do I go from here? We're working on the FAQ articles right now. So for those frequent asked questions, how do I see this or how do I do this? Once those are posted, that's going to be a really great resource for anyone who is like, how do I do this? How do I get this done? Cool. Alrighty, guys. Well, the only other thing I was going to talk about was agents paying for intake forms. Not everyone has a Stripe integration, but the only way that you're going to be able to charge your agents in your system is if you have Stripe and you have that Stripe integration set up within Open to Close. When you have that Stripe integration set up here underneath that Open to Close profile, the agents will be able to, or you'll be able to determine which agents need to be charged what. So I'm just going to go to our Justin right here. We can go to forms. Here we can see invoice price and submitted price. So what do these mean? The bottom one, submitted price, means that when that agent tries to go to submit that intake form, they are going to be charged a price. Okay. And again, this only works if you have that Stripe integration. So if you have it, you can set it up. But if you don't have it, then it's not something that's available. The one above that says charge this client's card internally. This is an invoice price. And that invoice price, the way that one works is that instead of you paying upfront, right, prepaying for that intake form, it's something that you pay after the fact. You can be charged at any time during that particular transaction. So if we were going to look at it on a property and you were going to go, okay, well, how do I charge people, Hannah? We're going to go to that More tab, and then we're going to go to Process Payment. If the agent has a card on file, you can process it. Otherwise, I believe from this view, again, if they had a card on file, you can send them the invoice for it. Okay. This is kind of what it looks like here. Once that, but again, I don't have that Stripe integration set up, and this agent doesn't have a card on file, so I can't necessarily charge them or show you what that looks like, but that's where we would go to have that set up. Cool beans. Alrighty, guys. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'll definitely give you back 20 minutes into your day. I appreciate everyone coming and asking the questions that you guys did have. If there's anything else that comes up, you can definitely reach out to us in support here by chatting with us live. You can send us an email at help@open2close. If you're looking for more webinars similar to this webinar on our Open to Close website, you can go to the Learn tab and go to Webinars. And then here you'll see the webinars that we have coming up. Today we completed intake forms and property templates. We just did Wednesday workshops right now. Next week, next Tuesday, we're going to be going over Fields 101 and then Emails 101. Okay, so we're kind of starting at the beginning of our training. Fields 101 is a great call for anyone who's brand new at the system, doesn't know anything about custom fields, wants to learn how to make them. That's a great call for you. It's also a good call for anyone who has been on the system for a while, who's like, Hannah, I'm making the switch to to property triggers. I want to learn how to build out property triggers. This is just a great call to review those fields because your property triggers are always going to relate back to your fields, right? Almost every part of the system is going to relate back to your fields. So it's a good call to be on to learn a little bit more about how everything works, and how to set them up and the best practices with it. Alrighty, guys, I'll go ahead and wait another probably like minute or two. If there are any other questions, definitely feel free to drop them in. If not, we'll go ahead and end for today. And yeah, awesome.